All right, so now we want to make this register form work, and ultimately that's going to happen by calling an action inside of our auth state called register, and then that's going to hit the server, it's going to put the user in the database, return a token, and then we have to handle that token. So let's jump into our auth state. So context, auth, and then auth state. And I'm just going to bring in Axios here because we're using that to make our requests. Okay, and then down here, let's go to, let's see, register user, and let's create a function here called register, and it's going to be asynchronous, so let's say async, and it's going to take in some form data, which is going to be the data to register the user. Okay, now since we're making a post request and we're sending some data, we need that content type header of application JSON. So with Axios, what we do is create a config object and then a headers object, and any headers that we want to include we put in here. So we're going to use content dash type and set that to application slash JSON. All right, and then under that config object, let's open up a try catch. Okay, because we're making a request here, and we're gonna have a variable called res for the response, and then we want to await on the Axios.post request, which returns a promise. And what this is going to take in is the URL, which is going to be /API/users. Okay, remember we have that proxy value in our package.json right here, so we don't have to actually enter localhost 5000 for every request that we make. Now, this is going to take in two other things. It's going to take in the form data, and it's going to take in the config. Okay, now if everything goes okay, then let's go ahead and dispatch to our reducer, and the type is going to be register success, and then the payload will be the response, which will be in res.data. And if you remember, the response is going to be the token. All right, and we can look at this backend route. If we go to routes users, this is what we're hitting right here, this API users. So basically we send our data, we pull it out here. We're going to check to see if there's a user. If there's already a user registered, it's going to return an error. So if this is returned, then the catch will be called. All right, then it'll keep going. It's going to hash the password that we send. It's going to save the user in the database, create the payload, sign the token, and then here it's going to respond with the token. Okay, in that case, it's going to be this right here. So res data will be the token. Now, if there's an error, then I'm going to go ahead and dispatch register fail. So if, for example, the email is already taken, we'll get register fail. Now, we don't want to do res data here. In this case, we're going to put the error response, which is going to be error.response.data, and then I can do dot. And if we look at our error message here, it's a JSON object with an MSG value. User already exists. So I want to put that inside the payload. So let's go back here and do data.msg. Okay, and that should do it. So we'll save that. Now we have to handle these inside of our reducer. So let's go to auth reducer, and I'm just going to paste in the types here. And then let's create our function. So we want to export default, and this takes in state and action. Okay, and then we're going to have a switch. Look at the type. We're going to have a default. So the default is going to just return the state as is. And then let's add a case for register success. And let's return. So if there's a register success, there's a couple things we want to do. Right above the return, I want to actually put the token that we get back inside of local storage. Now remember, the token is in the payload. It's going to be action.payload.token. So let's say local storage dot set item, and we want to set an item called token, and we want to get it from action.payload, which is the object, and then .token will give us the actual token. And then in this, as far as returning the state down to the component, we're going to spread the current state, and then the action.payload, this will be the token. So it's going to put the token in state. And then we're going to set is authenticated. Is authenticated. And we're going to set that to true now. So we're going to change it from null to true. And then loading is going to be false. Okay, so remember we set loading to true by default. Now if the register fails, let's say case register fail, in that case, then we want to remove I'm going to remove the token from storage, okay, on any failed registration. So we'll say local storage dot, and let's say remove item, and we want to remove the token. So we'll do that first of all, and then as far as our state, let's return state, and then we're going to pretty much reset everything. The token will be set to null. Is authenticated, we're going to set that to false, and loading we're going to set to false, user we're going to set to null, and the error is actually going to be the payload, so action.payload. And what I mean by that is back in our action here, let's see, so if we fail, the payload is actually going to include the error message. So something like, you know, email is already used or whatever, that will be sent in the payload, and we'll set that to this error so that we can see that within our state. So let's go ahead and save that. Now we need to be able to call this this register function here, and we want to do that from the register component. So let's jump over to that. So we'll go to components auth register.js, and let's see, what do we have to do here? So we need to bring in our auth context in order to use this. So let's say let's just copy this one down, and we can do this with shift option down. So we want to be in auth / auth context, and we're going to import auth context, and let's initialize it just like we did here with alert. Okay, and then let's see, we're going to pull out register, let's say const register, and we're going to take that from auth context. All right, now inside of our onSubmit is where we want to call this register, right? So if we go down to onSubmit, we're doing some basic error checking, sending out alerts, and then right here we're just console logging. Obviously that's not what we want. We want to call register, and register takes in that form data, and that form data is going to be an object with the name, the email, and the password. Okay, so we'll save that. Now in order to use register, we have to go to our auth state and make sure that we add that to the value here. Okay, now I'm probably going to keep forgetting to add these, so I think what I'm going to do, you guys don't have to do this, but I'm just going to create a shell for each of these actions, each of these functions we're going to create. So I'm going to say const load user. I won't even deal with any parameters or anything yet. Let's just do a dummy function here. We'll do a console log, and we'll just say load user. And I'm just going to copy that, and we have login. So this is going to be, let's see, let's just do login here. And then we have logout. And we have clear errors. Okay, so now I'm just going to add those down here so I don't forget in the future. So load user, login, log out and clear errors. So that should be everything that we need to basically export or provide to the provider. So we'll save that, and let's go back to register, and we should be all set to actually register a user. Now there's some other stuff we need to do. For instance, I want to provide an alert if for instance the email's already taken and that message comes from the back end and gets put in the error state. So I want to alert that. Also, once we log in, we're not doing anything. I want to be able to redirect to the home page or the dashboard when we log in. So we need to add that functionality as well. But let's just see if we can actually register a user. So we'll go to register, and let's put in, I'm actually going to open up my MongoDB Atlas account. Let's see. Okay, so if we go to collections and users, I have 2 users. I'm going to go ahead and delete Sam Smith and re-add him. Okay, so I clicked register, and let's check the console. So we don't see anything in the console. Let's check our React state. So auth state context provider. Let's look in value, and you can see we get is authenticated true. And if we look at token, the token is inside there. Now user is null, because what we're going to have to do is load the user. All right, and we're going to have to do that all the time to keep authentication to true. For instance, if I go ahead and I reload the page, and now we look back in our auth state, is authenticated is now null. It went back to null. The token's still there, but we're going to have our load user is going to get rid of the token if the user doesn't actually load. Okay, and I know that might seem confusing, but let's just make sure that the user went in the database. So I'm going to reload the database here. And there he is, Sam Smith. You get the email, the hash password, the date, the object ID. Good. So we're now able to register a user, at least get them in the database. Now I'd like to do a couple more things with this form. For one, we need an alert if the user's already registered. Right now, if I do Sam Smith, and we know that Sam@gmail is already taken. Let's try it. So if I register down here, we should get inside of our state the error user already exists. Now this isn't showing in the UI, so the user would have no idea what's going on. So we need to put that in an alert. Now we can do that by going into our register component, and let's pull out from auth context the error. Okay, the error that's in the state. We have access to that, and we want to check. We want to run this in the use effect hook. Okay, so we're going to say use effect. Bring that in, and let's put this. Let's see. We'll put this right below here. So use effect. And in here, I'm going to check the error. I'm going to say if the error is equal to, now I'm going to make sure I'm just going to check to see if it's equal to the actual message, which is user already exists. Now, if this were a larger application and I was doing this often, where I was actually getting errors from the state and outputting them, I would probably have an ID or something for the error, maybe even send an ID from the back end with the error, something like that. But where we're not doing this too much, I'm just going to check for the text, the exact text. Okay, so if the error matches that, then let's go ahead and set alert. And let's send out the error with the type of danger. All right. Now we want this to run when the error changes or when the error is added to state. So we're going to add down here just a comma and then some brackets, and we're going to add that error value as a dependency to use effect. All right, and then I want to clear the errors, so I'm going to go to my auth state, and right here where we have clear errors, I'm just going to dispatch to my reducer an object with the type of clear errors. Okay, and then in the reducer, we're simply going to say case clear errors, and all that's going to do is return whatever's in the state, and then it's going to change the error to null just to clear that out. Okay, now we can bring that into our component, into register.js. We can pull that from the auth context, and then we can call it. Okay, so now what we'll do is go back to our form and let's try it. So Sam Smith, and now we get an alert that says user already exists. Okay, so we're getting that message from the server, and then we're putting it into error inside of our state, and then we're checking that in our component and outputting it into an alert. Now later on we're going to have it so we can't view this page if we're authenticated, but right now we're not holding our login. Even though we get a token back from registering, it's not being held because we need to keep checking the user through the API through this specific route, which is right here where we get the logged in user. We basically want to hit this so that we can see if the user is actually logged in, because remember, JWT is stateless, so it's not like we have some session or something that's keeping our place. We need to basically keep making this request. Okay, so we'll start to work on the load user in the next video.